Hi everyone, so today I would like to explain about issues in language learning from the Practice of English Language Teaching book by Jeremy Harmer. So let's get started. The mind is a computer. Language cannot just be the result of endless repetition, but is instead the result of mental processing based on the input we receive. All a person's brain needs to get language acquisition going is input. This will then be processed by some kind of language acquisition device or LAD. In the early 1980s, the American linguist Stephen Carson claimed that language which we acquire subconsciously is language we can easily use in spontaneous conversation because it is instantly available when we need it. A language that is learned, on the other hand, where learn means taught and studied as grammar and vocabulary, is not available for spontaneous use in this way. Indeed, it may be that the only use to learn language is to help us to monitor our spontaneous communication. But then, the more we monitor what we are saying, the less spontaneous we become. Then, about explicit and implicit knowledge. If language can be acquired in a subconscious way successfully, then presumably there is very little need for explicit teaching of grammar and vocabulary. While comprehensible input may lead to some progress, students may reach point from which they fail to see further progress on some feature of second language unless they also have access to guided instruction. What forms might such guided instruction take? Commentators have made a difference between a more general focus on form and a focus on form. The former occurs when students direct their conscious attention to some feature of the language, such as the verb tense or the organization of paragraphs. It can happen at any stage of a learning sequence as a result of invention by the teacher or because the student themselves notice a language feature. It will occur naturally when students try to complete communicative tasks in task-based learning, or it might happen because the teacher gives feedback on a task the students have just been involved in, giving guided instruction to help the students explicit knowledge of some feature of language. Richard Smith explained that noticing is to describe a condition which is necessary if the language which a student is exposed to is to become language intake, that is, a language that he or she absorbs and understands. According to Smith, and based to some extent on his own learning of Portuguese, second language learners notice language instruction if they come across it often enough or if it stands out in some way. For noticing to be effective, language items have to be salient. Then about the language. A basic tenet of behaviorism is that good habits can be acquired through conditioning. In terms of forming the students in learning language, constant repetition seems to be a way of teaching language behavior. Students were given a cue or stimulus and responded. Success provided their reinforcement. Provided this was done often enough, good language habit would result. Often enough mean drilling, having the students repeat phrases and sentences either in chorus or individually. The more they did this, the better. Successful improvement meets well defined goals, motivation, feedback, and ample opportunities for repetition and gradual refinements. For drilling to be truly effective, then it has to involve more than mere repetition. Once what is to be drilled has been broken down into its constituent parts, we have to find ways of making it mindful and deliberate. Perhaps we can gradually discover parts of lines that are being repeat and ask students to write drills line down, use fluency circles, use shaded dictation, and use chain drills. And then some are sure that it is the actual nature of communication which affects successful learning. The key component in this view is cooperative interaction between speakers and especially the way they negotiate meaning between themselves. This is a collaborative talk that learners engage in when they experience linguistic problems and which helps them not only to resolve these issues in target-like ways while they are talking, but also to remember the solutions and use them independently in their own language at a later date. The grammar syllabus is also focused mostly on what is teachable, that is, on items which are easy enough to explain and for which the students are ready. But it tries to teach more difficult items too. Even though the article system in English is both complex and abstract and notoriously difficult to teach and learn. Thus, learners may be better off learning about articles via exposure in the input. On the other hand, a simpler rule of thumb, such as put an S at the end of a noun to make it plural, may be a better target for instruction. And next about the role of other language. And in such situations, English becomes not only the focus of learning, but also the medium of instruction. But for whatever reason, there is still a strong body of opinion which says that the classroom should be an English only environment. It is certainly true that the more the teacher and the students use the L1 or the native language, the less they will have a chance to hear and experiment with the language they are supposed to be learning. However, the reverse might be true. It may be that by not allowing students to use their native language at all in their English class, we might make them feel resentful and uncomfortable and worse. We might deny them techniques that will help them learn English. The use of the mother tongue doesn't seem to be a humanistic or and learner centered strategy. However, a danger is that teachers start to overuse the first language and as a result, English exposure suffers. And Penny, yours worries are justified. What we need perhaps is some kind of native speaker or L1 code of conduct for teachers. The first acknowledge the native language, use appropriate native language and the target language activities, and then differentiate between levels and agree clear guidelines and use encouragement and persuasion. Okay, so that's all about the chapter 2, issues in language learning. Thank you and see you.